Kids, you're expensive. You start off with diapers and clothes that you grow out of within a day, daycares, formula. Then you move into grade school, little youth teams, get into high school, phones, cars, car insurance. It's not cheap having a kid. It's actually very expensive, but it's also pretty freaking awesome. However, when I was first starting off teaching and had 2 young sons, I wasn't making so much, and I needed to get some extra cash to cover some of that, kid stuff. So I had to sell my cameras. Reason why I mention this, 4 years ago, I decided to do a mission trip, a first one. I decided to go to Israel and Palestine to do a mission trip there. Since I was going to such a biblical historical place, I borrowed a camera from a friend. And then when I was there, I witnessed a lot of things, took a lot of photos, took this photo, which I'll talk about more in a little bit. But that photo I took right there changed my life and one of my directions. And we'll talk more about it, as well as Israel and Palestine, in today's episode of
It's the World Civ Show with your host, Chad Wagner, at the Wagner Household Studios.
Alright guys, welcome to another online class, and I am at, again, one of the most places I find very peaceful. It's Rough River. There's a boat. Hey boat. So today we are talking about Israel and Palestine, and there's some things that we need to know. First that we gotta know is look back at the history, and like we're really gonna go way back in history, like way back in history. The father Abraham. Remember that song in VBS? If you went to VBS, Father Abraham had many sons. Many sons had Father Abraham. I'm one of them, and so are you. So let's just praise the Lord. Right arm. And then you would go to right arm, left arm. Anyways, let's take a quick look at Father Abraham through this chart right here.
Now, let's look at this chart real quickly, and it's on Rockspace for you to study in a little more further detail, but we keep saying stuff about Father Abraham. Why is he called Father Abraham? Well, I mean, he does become a dad, and he becomes a dad at 86. First with his wife's servant, and then again at the age of 100 with his wife who's in her 90s. So yeah, there's that, and like, holy schmankies. Whoa. But Father Abraham is considered a father because not only does he become a dad, but also he's considered the first of the Jewish faith. He's mentioned in the Quran in 37 chapters. He is part of the Christian faith. So he is the father of many nations, and he's going to be buried in a cave in Hebron along with his wife. So there's that. And if you scroll through Israel's history, brief history, you'll see, there's Rome that will take over. Jesus does his work in the area. Then Arab monarchs will start taking over in around 600. They will control until the fall of the Ottoman Empire at World War I. The British have it. Then the United Nations recognize Israel in 1948, becoming their own country as a place where a lot of Jewish refugees were coming. Then there's a couple of wars, the 6 Days War, the Yom Kippur War. So that is a quick, brief history of Israel that you guys need to look at in further detail.
So here's what happens. Palestinians feel like they're being occupied, and they're not a fan of it, and they create what was called the First Intifada. And things are very violent, dangerous on both Israel and Palestine. And nobody likes the situation. And then finally in 1993, we have the Oslo Peace Accords, which brokers. And if you recall, in the mural, boom, there's this photo with President Clinton, who helped negotiate that peace talks. Things go well for a little bit, but then people are like, I still don't like to be occupied. And we have a second Intifada. And this is the reason why. If you take a look here at
the way Israel's land has continued to grow and the Palestinian land has continued to shrink. And you can see why maybe the Palestinians are slightly upset. Now, Israel is one of our strongest allies, and we really like supporting them in the Middle East. And we have a very strong relationship with them. So much so that if you go to our U.S. State Department and look at what the U.S. State Department says, it says, the United States is committed to realizing a vision of a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, an independent, viable, and contiguous Palestinian state as the homeland of the Palestinian people, alongside the Jewish state of Israel. So our goal is to have these people live together. And we're not the only ones that are hoping this. You can see the foreign relations with Israel is pretty strong. All the countries here in blue are allies or have good diplomatic relations with Israel. But yet those countries that are in orange or pink have no diplomatic. So there is a pattern there. Which countries do you notice that are not having a relationship with Israel? What's the pattern there? What is the commonality? Take a look. Going back to the U.S. though, the United States, we do have a very strong relationship with them in Israel. Matter of fact, so strong, $3 billion is what the United States provides in foreign military financing. $3 billion. That's like $8 million a day that we send over to Israel. Now, COVID may be changing that. I don't know. I haven't seen what the State Department's doing with how COVID is doing that. But we're very supportive, and our current administration was completely supportive of Israel when they moved their capital from to Jerusalem. So yeah, it is a state that we are very, very much in agreement with, mainly because the United States is Israel's largest trading partner. Now, as I said, I was in Israel and Palestine back in 2016. That's when I did my mission trip. Somebody's having fun out there. And when I went, I saw what the violence had been doing to Palestinians and Israelis. Between September 29th of 2000 to when I went over in 2016, in the summer of 2016, there had been 1,263 Israelis that had been killed by Palestinians. But during that same time, there had been 9,876 Palestinians that had been killed. So there is definitely a swing difference between the two. Israeli kids that were killed by Palestinians are at a very tragic number of 134. Palestinian kids killed by Israelis was at that point 2,146. So again, tragic numbers. But I want you to think of this. If there is 9,876 Palestinians that were killed versus the 1,200, what that would be like is this. Imagine this, we're just over 1,200. So if you killed off everybody in Trinity, that would be the deaths between 2000 to 2016 when I was there of all the Israelis. But if you look at the Palestinian numbers, which was just under 10,000, that would be the entire student population of Trinity, St. X, Sacred Heart, Assumption, Mercy, Cells, Prez, Holy Cross, and then for good measure to get to those numbers, we'd also have to add Manual and Ballard. That is a drastic difference in school student population loss. Just think about those numbers. So one of the coolest places I have ever been to in my entire life is the old city of Jerusalem. And the old city is broken up into 4 different sections. There is the Muslim quarter, there is the Jewish quarter, the Christian quarter, and the Armenian quarter. And all 4 of those have 4 major religious faiths, all have
something in common. What is that? Well, besides the fact that they are all in this very small, tight, congested, old, historic city, they all have the same God, just different ways to get to that same God. Let's go back to the old city of Jerusalem, the holy city of Jerusalem, in which, seriously, it's a pretty amazing place. When I was walking through the holy city of Jerusalem, this old city, we often talk about walking the Stations of the Cross. Now imagine walking them like exactly where Christ walked when he did the Stations of the Cross. That's what you can do. Or you can go to the Garden of Gethsemane. I was there. Mount Olives. I was there. It is a very spiritual place for the Christian faith, but as I pointed out earlier, it's also a spiritual place for the Jewish faith and the Muslim faith. And one of the big disagreements is the Muslim faith and the Jewish faith are both really wanting the same 50 yards. And that's because the third most important mosque for the Muslim faith is the Dome of the Rock, right here, which I've taken in this picture, and it is in the dead center spot of the old town of Jerusalem. And reason why it's the third most important mosque is because for those of the Muslim faith, this is where it is believed that the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven. And so the Dome of the Rock is a very important spiritual place to go for a pilgrimage. Big issue though is that where the Dome of the Rock is built was where the Jewish temple had been built. Now the temple was destroyed, and the only thing that is left of a Jewish temple is the Western Wall, which therefore is the most spiritual place for the Jewish faith, because they believe when the Messiah finally does come, and the temple will be raised, it's going to be raised in that very exact same spot that it was. Again, problem there, because the Dome of the Rock is there. So what we're seeing is these two faiths that again have the same God, different ways to get there, fighting in essence over this small tract of land. All right, I do need to be honest about a little side note here. So I'm in the Garden of Gethsemane, and I decided to show up for a 6 a.m. sunrise mass. And as I'm walking in, I'm following these two lovely short nuns who were like a total height of 4'2", maybe. Anyway, so I go into the chapel. It is absolutely beautiful. There's about 14 people in the whole chapel, including 4 Americans. 3 of the people that went with me on to the sunrise mass. The thing is this, it's all in Latin. Now, I don't know Latin. I didn't do so well when I took Latin as a freshman at Floyd Central High School. Yeah, no, I only took it 1 year, and there was a reason why I only took it 1 year. It really hurt my grades. But I'm there, right? And I still know, what's going on in the mass because, I'm able to follow that part. And it gets to the part where we are doing communion. So I'm first person up in line because, I was the closest. And I stick my hands out there. And the priest, he takes the host and he drops it. But he doesn't drop it into my hand. Instead, he drops it right by his feet and it hits the ground. And I'm like, oh no, that doesn't seem good. So, reach down, grab the hose, keep it in my palm, and I slide myself on out. And then I realized I'm getting really nervous, so the host is getting pretty slimy in my hands because I still haven't taken it because it fell on the ground. I didn't know what I was supposed to do with it at that point. I mean, what are you supposed to do when the host falls on the ground? Spoiler alert, you're supposed to take it. But I didn't know. It's the first time I'd ever had that happen. And the priest, oh no, he starts swaying. And I'm like, starting to get really, really panicked at this point. And I see him sway some more. His fellow priest get right behind him. And then as he finishes communion, again, there's only like 14 of us or something of that sort, he collapses into the arms of the other two guys. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just killed a priest. I killed a priest because I didn't take the host right. And I did it at the Garden of Gethsemane. This is like going to be, I am in massive trouble. Yeah, this is all a true story, by the way. I still have the host in my hand. It is now becoming rather soggy because I've now thought I've killed a priest. Yeah, this is not going well for me. A monk, who is one of the other 14 people there, walks up to me and he's like, do you have the host? I'm like, uh-huh. He's like, give it to me. I'm like, okay. So I hand it to him. It was like a slimy, gooey mess at this point. Because again, I think I have just killed this priest. And monk, he takes it and eats it. I'm like, oh my. Yeah, all true story. So I watched the monk eat my slimy host that I should have eaten, that had been sitting in my hand for probably about 5 minutes, just melting due to my sweat, looking at a priest who I thought I have killed. And fortunately, as the mass has come to a conclusion, he's not dead. I haven't killed him, which is a good thing. It's good not to kill a priest at the Garden of Gethsemane by, thinking you've given him a heart attack. And one of the other priests comes up to me, clearly seeing I was somewhat distraught at this point, and says, it's okay. He's diabetic, and he just went into a little shock. It happens often. I'm like, all right, good to know. Good to know. Good to know I haven't killed a priest. So yeah, there's that story for you. So let us leave, though, Jerusalem and still look at this conflict between Palestine and Israel by going to the historic town of Hebron, where Father Abraham is buried. And oh Hebron. I would like you to do is take a look at this map, and this map is the old historic area of Hebron. And if you notice where all these blue markings are, that's where roads have been closed. Now, Hebron is in a Palestinian territory, but there are Jewish Israeli settlements that are there. And they control the old city, as you can see, because they have barricaded. So what do these barricades look like? Well, that is a barricade. And to go through the barricade, you have to line up. You go through those turnstiles. As you go through the turnstile, there is a window which you would show your papers to an Israeli officer. And then, once you got clearance, you went through the other turnstile. So numerous Palestinians, whether they work on one side of that turnstile or live on the other side of that turnstile, they have to go through these turnstiles. As I'm going through Hebron, I'm finding more and more stories. One of the things that I noticed was, as I'm walking through Old Hebron, I'm seeing the gates left over what I think is from the movie World War Z. If you've seen World War Z, it's not as good as the book. Matter of fact, the book's really good. Maybe it's all right. But if you've seen World War Z, you will recognize these. So I'm thinking, as a film study teacher, how cool is that to be able to see the props left over from the film World War Z? But the thing is, it's not. Because again, this is a Palestinian territory that has Israeli settlers that are living into it. And the Israeli settlers have taken the higher locations. Palestinians are forced to live in the lower sections. So if you notice now, if you take a closer look into that photo there, you'll see that there is some trash and stuff. And the reason why is because as Palestinians might be walking through their main thoroughfare there, Israeli settlers would possibly throw trash down on them. So it becomes a very complicated situation. That's not there to keep zombies from attacking someone. That's there to keep trash from not hitting you in the head as you walk around your own daily business. This is one of my friends that I met when I was there with the Christian Peacemaking Teams, which is the name of the mission group that I went with, and it was a great mission group to be a part of. As I was going to his house, we were about 40 yards away from it,
when we were stopped by some Israeli soldiers who were stationed there in Hebron. And they asked us, "Where are you going?" And they were asking him, and I, of course, couldn't speak the language, but he shared that he was going to his house, which was just 40 yards away. And they're like, "Yeah, you're not going this way." And he's like, "But there's my house. You can literally see it right there. We're just going to go have some tea." And I'm like, "You're not walking this way. You can go have tea at your house. You can take your friends. You're just not going this way. You'll have to go another way." So we ended up walking about a mile extra because the way we had to zigzag around through the rest of the streets, going around other blockades and then through some woods, literally going through an olive tree where there's all these olive trees and stuff like that, and to the backyard of his house. And then we were able to go in. And side note, he had just gone to the store to buy some groceries for his family, including a brand new soccer ball, or as they say elsewhere in the world, a football, for his son. And the guard said, "I need to look through your packages," and saw the soccer ball and says, "You don't need this," and kept it. So that was something that I did get to witness there in Hebron. But I want to bring up this picture again, because this picture is the one that changed my life. And let me give you a little backstory of what is happening in this photo. It is Sunday night in the historic old town of Hebron, which is where I'm staying. And while I'm there, I'm getting ready to watch and witness what is known as the Settlers Tour, in which on this occasion, and it happens every Sunday night, the Israeli military and Israeli police shut down a large section of downtown old historic Hebron to bring in tourists for a tour. The situation there is, though, this is that if you're a Palestinian, you can have soldiers that will enter your house because they need to get to the rooftops. They will close your businesses. They will not allow you to leave your house, or if you were trying to come home, they will stop you from doing so. And there's nothing you can do about it until the tour is done. So while I'm there, I'm seeing, it looked like about 50 soldiers with about 100 tourists all on this tour. And I'm just following them around, taking photos of what I'm witnessing. And this is what I witnessed. Little kids who were about 5 and 6, they're sort of following the end of a tour, and you can see these soldiers here are just, looking at them. And, the kids are like saying stuff, but I don't understand what they're saying. But in essence, I can tell they're doing some taunts, and they're like, bleh. They're even doing some facial things, and doing some wigs and stuff of that sort. And every time that they would get a little bit closer, the soldiers would stomp on their big military boots at them. Bam! And then the kids would scatter. And they'd come back. And they'd start, and there'd be another stomp with the boots. And they would run. And then they would slowly creep back. And this kept happening and happening. And this little boy right here saw what I was doing, taking these photos and things like that. And instead of taunting those soldiers, he walked in front of me, turned and looked straight me in the eye, and he's about 4 or 5, and then he does that. And so I take a picture. And it became probably one of the most powerful photos I've ever taken in my life. I took it, and there's this weird environment behind you, because you have this little boy that's doing this, and right behind him you see these soldiers that have machine guns. I shared it on my social media platforms, and from there it got shared and was picked up by NBC News, and it shared even some more. And so at that point, I can say, because of the bravery and courage of that little boy, it made me realize I have stories to tell around the world when I go witness them, and I can tell those stories by capturing them with the camera. So the reason why I'm able to capture all of our athletic events, it's because of this little kid right here who changed my life by his bravery. If hate is the worst word in the English language, which we've already talked about, then another word that begins with the letter H, that's only 4 letters, could very well be the best word in the English language: hope. And there is hope in Hebron, as well as in Palestine. Such as with this guy that I met here. I don't know his name. All I know is this. It was my last morning in the city of Hebron, and I was really wanting a coffee. So I went to the cafe, but the cafe was closed. I was like, drats. I really wanted that coffee. And this gentleman who was walking reached out to me in English and said, hey, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I was just hoping to get a coffee from the cafe, but it's closed. And he's like, here, come to my house and I will give you coffee. And it was cool. And he brought me into his house and I sat with him and I talked to him, and we talked for about an hour, and just sharing stories of who we are. And out of the goodness of his own heart, he opened the door to his home to me, welcomed me, a person from another country in his land who was drastically different than him, into his own house just to have some coffee with him. It was one of the coolest experiences of my life. So this is Israel and Palestine, and I'm painting a bad picture after all, and I haven't even talked about this kind of stuff, but there are kids that can't go to school because Israeli soldiers just stop them from going to school. They don't want the Palestinian kids, and so they put up blockades so they can't go to school. Not because of COVID, although they can't go to school right now because of that too, like us, but just because they're not allowed to go to school at times. Then there's this soccer coach who put up a net over his pitch because when he'd be practicing with either his 5-year-old team, his 10-year-old team, his high school team, at times they would have tear gas shot at him to disperse them from their own soccer fields. And so he put this net because the tear gas would be burning into the pitch. So, you know, these are not good stories. But one time while I was in Israel, I met a soldier who was part of the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force. And it's this guy right here. And we started talking. Because it wasn't because he was Israeli, it was because he was an American that went to go live in Israel. And he had grown up in Cleveland. He had just graduated a year prior from a Catholic high school in Cleveland. And so we had this connection and we talked. And he said to me, as one American to another, it's like when you're in a daycare and you see 2 kids fighting over the same red car. And there's a blue car that one could play with, but they're both fighting over the same red car. And it's a childish fight. And that's how he best summarized the situation that he saw by working in the IDF there in Israel. So there is all this heartbreak, and Israelis will say 22. And what that 22 means is this: there are 22 other countries that are predominantly Islamic based there in the Middle East. There's only one Jewish nation. And they're like, we have 1. They have 22. Let us just have our 1. So again, it is a very complicated situation that we have, but we do have hope. And hope is truly the best thing that we can wish for. And what I see in hope is in the eyes of the kids that I was there, whether I was in Israel or whether I was in Palestine. My generation has failed you guys on so many things. The generation before also has failed us. I mean, my generation's done some great things, and the generation before us has done great things. But in like solving some of our issues with just being human, we haven't come up with the answers yet. We failed in that part. So I have hope that you guys are going to be the ones that are able to solve this, as well as some of our other pressing issues that we have as humans. All right, that's our notes. Real quick side note, this was 4 years ago. One night when I'm walking through the old town of Jerusalem, I got into a Wi-Fi situation. Sweet. Anytime you found Wi-Fi is pretty darn good. So I opened up my phone, opened up this game. So I heard immediately somebody from Palestine yelled out, "Clash of Clans!" Yep, that's right. I was playing Clash of Clans back then. Hope your guys' clan is still... Oh, and one more side note. When I'd be walking around there, as well as when I'm in other countries and around the world, a lot of times I get the question, you know, because I look different than what the people I'm visiting look like, and I get the question of, "Hey, where are you from?" And so proud of our Commonwealth, I often yell out, "Kentucky." And much like in Palestine, as in Kenya, as in India, as in other places I've been to in Latin America, as soon as I say Kentucky, usually 9 times out of 10, I get this as an answer: Kentucky Fried Chicken. Yep. So there you go. We have that going for us too, being in Kentucky. KFC, finger licking good. All right, guys, as always, remain awesome, be nice, and stay safe. Here, for you, is a moment of goodness. See you soon.